Alright, so we're here in the shop. It's raining outside today. It's pretty nasty out, to be honest with you. Luckily we got this baby closed in. Look at that. Look at that. Got this thing closed in. We got the Tyvek on the door. We're staining all the wood. We got one side done, one side's not. We end up doing mahogany, that real expensive 8-year stain, like we did the other bay doors with, which look pretty decent. But what we're gonna do today is talk about coolant leaks on M54 engines. So it's gonna be E46 guys, E39 guys, E53 X5, and X3 up to 2005. So we have our E39 in here. It's kind of, well, I guess we're kind of stuck in here now since that's Tyvek and the hinges aren't on that. But I figured shoot a video on it. And what we got here is a coolant leaking machine. If you don't keep up on these things, even if you do keep up on them, they like to leak coolant. And before you guys started on me, the shroud's off of this for testing purposes, and we won't put that back on to the very, very last. So we're gonna start off. We'll start off with the front, work our way to the back, and there is a lot of them. Most common, or some of the most common to start with, is the radiator. The radiator has plastic tanks on it. You can see right there. And what usually happens is the plastic tanks will crack on the side. Usually it's on the driver's side around that top hose for some reason. And then of course, once they do that, they start leaking out and so forth. All right, there we go. Fix the light situation a little bit here. Got a little bit of that action going on. So yeah, like I said, the radiator, usually the plastic tanks like to crack. Usually it's right up in here. And really either side, the top or lower, where you pull the radiator hose off, usually, that don't look good. That don't look good at all. Can crack that. I would say that's fairly common over 100,000 miles. Another thing is these hoses. All these push lock hoses, the upper radiator, the lower radiator hose, and there's two that run from the bottom of this tank on E39, go all the way down and run up and around, and they go back to tubes under the intake into the heater core. Those can get expanded if they get oil on them and they get rupture or something touches them. The same way with these, if they get higher steering fluid on them and any little thing touches them, it'll put a gash in it and start spraying coolant out. This little guy here could leak too, but this isn't as common. And a lot of guys also break the little nipple off of this where that mounts onto there, and that could be a coolant leak also. Now, as far as undetectable coolant leaks, the water pump is the #1 culprit on undetectable coolant leaks. They'll actually leak through the bearing, and a lot of guys will say, well, I gotta add like a coffee cup of coolant to my car every day or two. Usually that's the water pump leaking out, and it doesn't leak out at low speeds on these. Since it's a mechanical water pump, the faster the engine turns, the more it pumps. A lot of times it'll leak out only at highway speeds, so you'll never be able to see it actually leak. But if you take this pulley off, flip around, look at the back of it, usually you can see if it's been leaking or not. It'll have like a, like a white residue or like a rusty looking residue on the back of it. And eventually that'll run the bearing in the pump. It's leaking out through the bearing. And that's a real common one. Now the thermostat housing can also do that same nonsense. As water pressure goes up, it can leak out, drip out the bottom on the belt and kind of fling it everywhere. Sometimes it'll leak out down the front of the block, the front of the head, and drip on the bottom undetected. In more extreme cases, the two hard coolant pipes that go up to the head, another one goes in the back, the timing chain cover, those could also leak, but usually those will rupture and totally break off. So if you're getting around 150, I would say 150,000 miles would be the limit on what I want to leave in there. You need to change those two coolant pipes. They're about $15 a piece, or about $30, $35 for a set of them. To change those, you got to take the intake manifold completely off. which while you're in there is a good time to go ahead and inspect everything else. As far as the heater valve over here, you can see, usually those don't leak. Usually they'll stop working. It won't cause an overheating problem, but it'll definitely cause an issue with the heater not working. You know, so that's pretty much the situation. That's a lot of them. More extreme cases, overheating or coolant loss, to be caused by the head bolts where they screw into the block. It pulls aluminum threads out. The car might still run kind of fine. You could also see the coolant running down the side of the engine block from that problem, or just using coolant, missing coolant. And a lot of common issues with the head bolts being pulled are, number one, smoking, white smoke. And number two, after the car sets overnight or after a few hours, it'll kind of hydrolock when you go to start it, like the starter will drag down, and sometimes it'll just click. You turn the key to start it, it's click, and you wait a second, hit it again, and it'll start. Those are all symptoms of coolant getting down the cylinders. And then also M54, M52tu, and even M52 all have a tendency to like to crack the cylinder head. So if you have a cylinder head crack, usually by the time you get those on these aluminum engines, the engines itself is done too. Just to clarify that, an M54 or M52tu, you're never going to have a cracked head or a blown head gasket without there being some thread issues in the block. And just to recap on that real quick, is it worth doing the head bolt retap on this engine? As of right now, no, it is not. I'm going to tell you why. If your head's cracked, you need to buy a new head. You're looking $300. Let's say you get a real good deal one for $250. All right, $250 to $350 to $400. You can buy a cylinder head, and then you still got to retap all that stuff. You need to go buy special drill bits, taps, time certs. We've had some issues with those not holding up after a very long period of time at all. And new engines, I think the last one I bought was right at $500 free shipping. So why would you spend $400 or more on a head gasket and the cylinder head and retapping when you just buy the whole engine for the same price? I mean, that's just kind of the situation with that. Other than that, guys, these really don't have a whole lot of other issues. If you have an E46 and you have automatic transmission cooler that pushes in there, or X5 or X3, that has a oil ring on it too that could also leak. But those aren't near as common. So once you get all the basic nonsense done, and what I do on these cars, when I first get them in, if I'm going to keep the car or if I'm working on it for somebody, I tell them, I say, hey, look, you need to do water pump, thermostat, we need to do some hoses, and probably the hard pipes under the intake, just to make sure you're not having constant coolant losses over time. And a compression test or a leak down test may or may not show head bolts being pulled out. A lot of times that gap doesn't open up till the engine's hot, so you may not be able to tell just exactly what the situation is. That's going to be pretty much it for M54, M52tu, and it's not an over complex engine. It's actually a very simple engine once you figure out how to work on it. And like always, I tell you guys constantly, it is easier to work on this engine in an E39, as you can see all the space, versus E46. So that's going to be it, guys. I think I pretty much covered all of it. So yeah, let me know if this helps you guys out. This is one of the most common asked questions I get is coolant leaks on this, missing coolant low all the time, can't find coolant leak. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.